So
You got a lot of Sharpies in there, it looks like.
I know.
I'm impressed with your Sharpie collection.
I know, yeah. I will never, well, not anytime soon, run out of them. It's true. Yeah. I guess you can see all my trade secrets. Yeah. There was a particular reason for why I could probably lose them.
I steal at hotels. I often will take a bunch of pens, and I was just at a hotel over the weekend that had good. You start to notice they've got good pens.
Sure.
So this was the Chicago O'Hare Airport Hilton.
Oh,
they had really good pens.
It's good to know.
I got about 5.
I wonder if I could wrangle a sponsorship out of that. I don't think so. So were you at a screening of...
I actually was at a funeral.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My old friend Bill Siegel went under on me.
Right, and you said Chicago. I should have. Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's right. I did want to bring you on in part to talk about Bill because he was such a mentor and meant so much to so many people, right? But you collaborated with him on one of your documentaries. Yeah. And when you said Chicago, I should have realized who you were referring to. How did you meet him?
We met in the early 90s. We both were researchers on a very ill-fated documentary series about Muhammad Ali.
Makes sense. Again, he did the trials of Muhammad Ali, right?
We met Leon Gass there. He was working on it, and it was this completely bonkers project where these two British, I wouldn't even call them filmmakers, guys who made ads, connected with Ali somehow and got the rights to make this documentary about him. And they got millions of dollars from a Japanese publishing company, opened a office in Soho, and had no idea what they were doing. So this 1-hour documentary slowly got bigger and bigger until it was a 12-part series. The crazy thing, I didn't know at the time that it was just insane, but what they did is they hired the editors before they shot anything. So all these editors were just sitting around waiting for stuff to be shot. It didn't make any sense at all. But
were they on the clock?
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Anyway, it was a great job. It was a great job for me right out of college.
Yeah.
And was one of my early documentary sort of formative experiences.
So that series on Muhammad Ali, obviously he was alive. And this was separate from the trials of Muhammad Ali. That was later. That was later.
That was what Bill made. We both had very deep Ali interests. We called them hobby horses, and one of Bill's was that, and that
themes that keep or subjects that keep coming back.
Came back, with him in that film.
Right, and Leon did The King.
Yeah,
which is another lauded.
For sure.
Those two films, I would say, were the two that really kept gotten the most accolades and attention. And
Leon, I think, executive produced Bill's movie.
Oh, okay.
That one, yeah.
When Muhammad Ali died about 3 or 4 years ago, right? I reached out to both Bill and Leon.
Yeah.
To which I was a little bit. I'm always a little cautious, but I like to do that because, usually with somebody in the film world, if they pass away, I try to, like with Bill now, and reaching out to you, although we had already been in the works, but Muhammad Ali is like yourselves. For some reason, it just meant so much to me. My age, growing up with him, being one of these ubiquitous icons, and so when he died, I wanted to get on Leon or Bill, and Leon responded sooner, I guess. I don't remember, but so unfortunately, I think I was going to still try to get Bill on as well, but it didn't happen. Anyway, so how was the ceremony?
It was, I mean, you can't say something like that. It was great. It was,
I know, but it can be.
Well, people spoke.
Cathartic.
But anybody dying at 55 is just a tragedy. I had teenage kids. It's just such a bad situation that it's hard for it to be anything but that. But people spoke, and he was evoked, and that was nice. It was good to see people.
I'm sorry. Sorry for that. And as someone who's the same age, with a teenage son, it does.
Yeah.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Don't forget there's a contact information. Yeah. Anyway, and so Bill, what other things would it be known would be known for the things that he had his hands on.
Well, he made like we said, the Ali documentary, and then we made Weather Underground together.
Right.
He was working on that came out in 2003.
Okay.
And we had really become friends doing this, working on this series, and continued to be friends. And at some point, we both had an interest in radical history, and at some point, I said to him, "Hey, you want to work on a movie about the Weather Underground together?" And we did.
That sounded like it's right up his alley. What is it about stories of our radical history, or of just radical history in general?
I mean, for me, I grew up in the 80s, and I lived in Michigan, and there was always a kind of like the vapors of the 60s were still around.
Yeah, sure.
And but growing up in the 80s as a teenager, you looked around the world and you thought, how did the 60s become the 80s? It kind of didn't make sense. So for me, in an almost self-interested way, I was trying to make sense of what happened to that time. I mean, that is what drew me to the Weather Underground story, because in a way we know a ton about the 60s and 68 and flowers in your hair and stuff like that, but
Woodstock, and
very few people, much less attention has been paid to the end of that period and how that period became the 70s, and how really the 60s lasted into 1975 or 77 in a way, what we think of as the 60s. So
very much, right.
The Weather Underground is kind of a key or a vehicle through which to explore that.
I see. Yeah. It is a part also on a personal level of your youth, and it was going on maybe through exploring some of these things that were happening that weren't necessarily on your radar because you were more concerned with watching cartoons,
right,
or hanging out and collecting comic books, whatever it was, But this was going on in the world during that time.
For sure.
Kind of looking at it now, this is part of your story in a way, too. And
it's true.
I get that interest. I think I have similar interests, So I remember seeing that when it came out, The Weather Underground,
So Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn were at the funeral. The two people from the Weather Underground, and we went to the Oscars with them, and that was really fun. And they spoke at the funeral and talked about hearing us rehearsing our speeches, because back then, I don't know if it's still the case, but back then, if you're nominated, they tell you've got to write a speech, because if you win and you get up there and you haven't written something, you're fucked. So we wrote these great speeches, sort of knowing we weren't going to win, which gave us great freedom. And Bill wrote this very revolutionary thing, really, really kick-ass speech. So I'd forgotten all about that. That was a nice.
Was that one of the Billy Crystal years?
Yeah, I think so.
Those were, I think, the best overall, I should say, as far as hosts go. He sort of, it's appealing right now, that the idea of, I think, that bringing him back again because of all this stuff that just went on.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, who are listening, the Weather, just because we were talking about the Weather Underground, I'm just going off on spontaneously, but it was a radical group. It wasn't very big, was it?
No.
But they were just, they were radical, progressive, political leftists, and who felt like they needed to make more reactionary noise.
There were young people who had protested against the war and racism for many years in the 60s, and by the end of the 60s, the war was just getting bigger and worse, and they felt like nonviolent protest wasn't working. So what they did is they went underground, sort of disappeared from sight, and did a series of bombings. They never hurt anybody. It was symbolic, but, they put a bomb in the Capitol, they put a bomb in the Pentagon, a lot of buildings like that, and they do communique. So it was kind of like, they called it armed propaganda, which in a way it was, and they were not a big group. It was a couple hundred people, but they really struck a nerve, a cultural nerve, because the FBI chased them for years and never got them, and they were sort of like these Bonnie and Clyde, outlaw hippie kids. So there was a kind of romantic aura to it.
Was that your first documentary?
No, I had made a documentary before that called The Rainbow Man, John 3:16, and it's just a movie I made out for complete fun, not thinking about it at all, and I came up with a movie of the worst length for a movie you could ever get. 42 minutes long.
Yeah, right.
Which it's not a short and it's not a long.
It's a long short or a short.
Well, somebody
feature.
once told me it's a schlong.
It's a schlong. That's really funny.
And I thought that was it was one of the Sundance programmers. They have that term.
Yeah, that's why they're at Sundance.
We started joking about how there could be schlong film, like the New York Schlong Film Festival and the New York Jewish Schlong Film Festival.
That's right. Schmucks only,
But anyway, so I made that, and that actually, to my surprise, it screened at Sundance and it screened all over. So,
as a short,
as a feature with another long short with it.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in the festivals back then, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would happen today, but it might.
They paired it with another sort of similar film that was long too.
Yeah, but I forget who I was talking to just the other day. It was probably at a party because they. Like Motto and elsewhere. A lot of Roger Raw, all these guys had their parties, and I was talking to somebody about it, and they were like, they didn't understand the short. And I'm on the New York Film Festival screening committee. I'm just mentioning that because I had to watch 100 shorts. Ooh. And but I had a nice period of time to do it, and there were a lot of very good shorts in there. But the thing you hear from the majority of American let's just say American festivals, is they like that 7 minute. Oh, who I was talking to? I was talking to Chris Hedges, and she, I guess, we were talking about shorts at one point, and she was saying, oh yeah, because she never really had to think about that. First of all, they don't make shorts, the two of them, and so, but they just, I guess, were helping or producing somebody, or I don't know, and she was like, I just realized, I just found out I was talking to somebody, and they said the 7 minutes is, you don't want to go, or something. I think it was her. But I
think now that's probably the case.
Yeah, the thing is, still, you make a short for the length it's supposed to be. You have to.
You make any film for the length it should be,
right?
For sure.
Yeah,
and it's funny because the Rainbow Man, the movie I made, should have been 42 minutes. That was just right. I wasn't thinking about it, which was the best way to do it.
Yeah,
and it got out in the world.
Right. Sure. And it probably created some opportunities.
For sure.
Because of that, right? And also, it's funny you say it was too long for a short, but it was also too short for broadcast length. So if it was another 10 minutes, it might have been, you'd have to somehow figure that out, I guess, if you're trying to do that. Right?
Yeah. That movie, that was 1997, so it was like a different era, but it got on one of the airlines was screening was having independent films on. This like
it's nuts.
Yeah, and
that was before they had the individualized.
Yeah, it was like in first class they would have something, like indie films or something. And when I made this film, I didn't think about length, and I never thought about licensing anything either. And, the Rainbow Man was this guy who would show up at televised sporting events wearing a rainbow-colored wig. And he got famous by doing this.
Oh, right.
And so the film is made out of tons of TV clips of him on shows. None of it licensed at all. So...
How'd you get it?
How did I get the stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, that's another long story. Which,
all right.
But, so anyway, this was the airline got in touch with me to... Mm-hmm. Show this, and I was like, sure, because it was something like $1,000 or something. Sure. And I just thought, strange. I hope nobody watches this, which I don't think anybody did because nobody ever sued me.
Right. Oh, interesting. Right. Because of, you can show it often festivals.
Yeah.
It's not an issue, but once you're talking about, where there's
money and
commerce going on, and then rights have to be paid and all. That's right. That's amazing. That you could have gotten away with that, right?
It's a different world.
Yeah, 20 years ago. And there was also a fraction of the festivals that there are now, too. Right?
Fraction of the films.
And films. Well, I guess, yeah. Of course.
So many more films.
Right. Well, you can make them, as we, know. Anybody can call themselves a film.
Yeah, it's true.
To some degree. Where did you study? Did you?
I studied film at the journalism school at UC Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
I went there. I was going to be a newspaper reporter.
Really?
And I was signing up for classes for the second year, and I had a friend who said, "Hey, you want to take this documentary class? I hear it's really easy."
Which makes sense.
Yeah, so I said, "Oh, sure, I'll take it." And I didn't know Marlon Riggs was the teacher. I didn't know who he was, and I just literally that changed my life.
It just turned on a light.
Yeah,
switch.
It was so fun. Making films was fun. Writing for me was really hard.
Right.
Films was fun and collaborative, and I had a facility for it. I mean, it seemed like, okay, I like doing this, and I seemed like I can do it. And also, I had never really seen any experimental documentaries. I just sort of knew the world of PBS, boring PBS documentaries. So people would pass around tapes. It was almost like the Soviet Union or something, VHS tapes. And
Yeah.
I saw Sans Soleil, and I'd never seen anything like that, and just was totally mesmerized by it. So.
Yeah. Right. This very different, where there was this whole world going on of experimental films and
experimental documentary, especially. I really
nonfiction, let's call it.
Nonfiction, yeah.
Relax.
Whatever. Yeah. I had not known that world existed, and to me, that was just, this is my place. I really liked that. So.
And were you trying to figure out if you could make a living doing that?
Hell no. I was
Didn't care. You were young.
Yeah, and I all through my 20s, I was weighed down by this big existential question: what am I going to be? And sometime towards the end of my 20s, I just had this epiphany where I thought, I'm not going to figure that out. I'm just going to do what I enjoy doing. So I'm going to make this film about the Rainbow Man. That was my first film. And I did it, and it got out there, and I thought, wow, this is kind of fun. I'm going to make another film. I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm just going to make another film. And I made The Weather Underground, and that got even more out there. And I've tried to keep going with that, but it gets harder as you get older. You sort of take on this thing you do as an identity.
And you have to fill out tax forms, and you have to fill out...
You got to say you're a filmmaker.
Right. And you have to fill out grant forms, and you have to do it. And, eventually, whether you know it or not, you are the filmmaker that you're writing
on
down
the form, you can't say occupation guy who's doing what
making
he wants.
Films. Yeah, right. Following my not music bliss. Thank you. So it seems like by your second one, and you've now have actually because Weather Underground that obviously was out in theaters.
Yeah,
but did it get a broadcast?
Yeah, it was on PBS.
Wow, so that's pretty.
Slightly cleaner version was on PBS.
Yeah, was it on like a not POV, right?
It was on Independent Lens.
Independent Lens, right? Lois Vossen, who's I'm sure you know quite well. She's a real. She's become now. We have a regular thing we do every year now. We've done 2 of them, so now I can say that.
Really? Oh, great.
Well, she comes on to talk about the new season.
Oh,
yeah, so
excellent.
She is a great guest.
She's awesome.
Yeah, you run a company, and she's very enthusiastic and funny.
They had just given Bill money to make a new film. Bill Siegel.
ITVS, you mean?
Yeah, with Lois about Voice of America.
So he wasn't sick. He just it was very.
He had
sudden.
a heart attack.
He had a heart attack.
Yeah.
Wow. And what was it going to be about? The film
Voice of America.
Voice of America.
The propaganda, American propaganda.
Yeah, right. What happened after? What happened subsequently to Weather Underground?
What happened after Weather?
Well, I mean, now you're kind of figuring out this. Okay, this is a career, so I guess I may as well own it.
Yeah, I mean, after that, I was making a kind of experimental documentary about Utopia called Utopia in 4 Movements, and I really loved Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, the Errol Morris film where there's several characters, and it never explains why they're grouped together, and you as a viewer try to make those connections yourself. I really like that.
Yeah.
So I thought I'm going to make this a film about Utopia and the 20th century, focusing on 4 different stories. And I'm not going to sort of weave them together myself, but hopefully people will make something of it. And so I shot these 4 pieces, and I put it together, and I showed it as a rough cut to people, and people said, this makes no sense whatsoever. And I was completely crushed.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
were they separate vignettes?
Yeah,
or were
they were all
strung-
separate stories.
Okay.
One was about
Yep.
Esperanto, the language Esperanto.
Yeah, okay, I had to read about that. Yeah.
One was about the world's largest shopping mall. One was about an American revolutionary fugitive living in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
And the other was about something called forensic anthropology. So granted, they don't obviously connect,
Mm-hmm.
but to me they really did. And I expected people to get it, and they didn't. So I was really stuck.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, and I'd never made a film with voiceover. I came from when I was coming up, voiceover was really scorned.
Frowned upon, right?
Yeah, it was like, because that had been the past, these bad voice of God documentaries.
Right. Yeah.
So I was stuck, and somebody asked me to do a presentation about this project.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the middle of editing it, and I said, okay, what I'll do is I'll show some clips and I'll talk. And that sounds kind of boring, so I'll get my friend Dave Surf, who made music for Weather Underground, to make some music. So it'll be like a fancy lecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that, and it was really fun. And it also, weird thing is, it worked just the way I wanted the movie to work.
Mm-hmm.
People got it.
Mm-hmm.
The connection between these 4 stories. So I kind of... that registered, and then somebody else at another film festival said, will you give that talk about your film project? So
Mm-hmm.
I said, sure, and we made it even more sort of like fancy with live music, and that worked super great too. It did what I wanted this film about Utopia to do, and I thought, I've never heard of a live documentary, but maybe that's, I said every film has its length. In some ways, maybe every film has its ideal form too, and
Mm-hmm.
this one seemed appropriate for a lot of different reasons, and
Mm-hmm.
so we showed it to the programmers at Sundance. We went to LA and sort of did it in an empty theater, me and Dave Surf, and they programmed it, so it's like, cool, okay, it'll show at Sundance. I never had thought beyond that, like, what do you do with a live documentary? And we toured around for a couple of years showing this, and it was so much fun, and
Mm-hmm.
it really worked, and it opened my eyes to a lot of things about performance, the performing arts world. This was in the film world at festivals, but also
Sure.
in the performing arts
right,
world.
because there's the live components to
Yeah.
it. And did you find it hard to market this thing, to figure out how to communicate what you're
What it
trying to
is?
do to potential
a little bit.
ticket buyers? Or
The challenge was that, you're like, is it a movie? Is it a lecture?
Live show?
What
Right.
is this? But the upside was people seemed to be very interested and eager for a kind of film thing that was different. And I think all festivals now have this existential quandary. If you can just watch this stuff on the internet, why should I come to a film festival?
or a movie theater.
Or a movie theater.
Yeah.
And this was definitely something you could not see on the internet. So in a lot of ways, I think for festivals, and festivals still have this a little bit, that like a live event is cool.
Mhm.
So it was hard but easy at the same time. It was much easier than I thought. A lot of people got in touch with us to do that show.
Oh, great. Right. And that was how far back?
2010.
2000. Okay, so not that long ago.
Not that long
But
ago.
you've been doing it since.
Yeah.
Because this is something that's obviously really...
I just was really taken with this form, and each time I've made a live cinema piece, I've been trying to use it a little better, and there's such powerful tools there. So I'm sort of exploring how to use them, and I feel like the last one I really got it.
Mm-hmm. Which was...
It's called 1,000 Thoughts, and it's a live cinema piece about the Kronos Quartet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Famous
Yep.
classical group, and they play the soundtrack live.
So you connect, obviously.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But they like doing that kind of thing too, right?
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
they're up for doing weird stuff, and they've done a lot of soundtracks. So, what is it?
I just got... Penny Marshall passed away, I just heard.
Wow.
Yeah.
Keep that in the podcast. That's big.
That just came to a friend just...
You must have Laverne and Shirley as like a old memory.
I hated that show.
Really?
Well, it was it was part of the wallpaper of my age too, growing up. But I remember Lenny and Squiggan, who would have thought that, Lenny would have become like, one of the great performers and entertainers of my age, Michael McKean, who liked one of my tweets or something like that once, and I thought, okay, I've made it, totally. Well, sorry that we lost Penny Marshall.
Yeah,
sad.
She was interesting. Who would have thought
in real time
she would have gone on to have a career as a director?
Right. Yeah, and a really successful one too. Right. Even though she seems like I guess she did stop making films for a while. Right. And her ex-husband Rob Reiner is one of the another TV sitcom actor who also and then who was the other one? Of course, was Ron Howard for sure. The three of them all around the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Fonzie did not make a lot of movies after that.
Well, as an actor, you mean?
No, I mean as a director.
A film. Did he direct anything?
No.
Maybe something. But he's certainly also flourished on TV shows like Arrested Development and this new show with I'm going to forget his name, but the guy from Saturday Night Live who is a contract killer, assassin, and he gets roped into taking acting classes, and he falls in love with being an actor. And and Henry Winkler is the teacher of the class, and
that sounds really good.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm hopeless about TV.
But Henry Winkler was very funny. It's very against type.
Yeah,
against the Fonzie and the whole and his whole clean cut kind of Henry Winkler's reputation, whatever. Anyway, rest in peace.
Yeah,
Penny Marshall. We were talking about the Kronos Quartet and that they like to collaborate. And they like to, and they're obviously an experimental classical group. They're not just a classical, right? They're not just doing classical pieces.
It sort of transcends classical.
A little bit,
they come out of a classical tradition, but they're sort of like Muhammad Ali in that they transcended their discipline and brought a lot of attention to it. They became Muhammad Ali was larger than boxing, and Kronos Quartet is the same way.
Yeah, interesting.
Ask anybody on the street. Most people who know Kronos Quartet couldn't name another classical quartet.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, yeah, they did that album with Elvis Costello all that time back. That's, I think, another... I remember discovering them through that.
Yeah.
Years, like 20 years ago when they were...
It's funny, a lot of people know them just through their soundtrack. So they're like, Requiem for a Dream. They did that?
They did? Oh, I didn't realize. Okay.
That's their big hit.
Okay. Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
So this becomes this thing of yours. Is it would it be just easier sometimes to... I mean, one thing I wanted to say before when you were talking about how you've been able to... what's the word? Not improve upon, but... Well, it is improving upon, but it's just also being able
explore, to... fine, hone
down. And, is that the first project, which was 2004, you said, or something?
2010.
2010? Oh, much more recent. Was that was the Kronos one?
No, the first one was
the most recent one you did.
Utopia.
Rather. Utopia, exactly. But that was incidental, or you had made it as a conventional experimental film, let's say, and then rejiggered it with retrofitted it into this new thing which you didn't
more or less
didn't even know what it was at first, right? But they kind of developed into something organically. So then you were able to build off that experience with the subsequent works, right? And then gauge how audiences were responding, how you were responding, how things
what ideas
would
work. So I did a piece about Buckminster Fuller,
right? I was
with the band Yo La Tengo.
Okay,
and that was great because it was really interesting to work with a band that people know, and that was. Part of what I'm trying to do with this is to make a kind of charged atmosphere in the room that you wouldn't get if you were just watching it with your laptop. And so it was really interesting to see when they would come on. They have a lot of fans.
Yeah.
People love bands. And they would come into the room and you could feel a kind of charge in the air. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to realize you can heighten the experience by working with a band that people know and love, and not saying that in like a star fucking way, but just in the mechanics of it, that this helps to add a kind of specialness in the air that you're seeing this band you love. So, that was a big epiphany for me. And then Kronos Quartet, similar. A lot of people love them, but having them be the subject and playing the music is a kind of meta level to it that I'd not done before, and it really, that I feel like makes this piece definitely the best thing I've made of all the films I've made, because it's conceptually it's strong, I think.
And how frequently do you? And by the way, Tengo seems another group that likes to really collaborate.
Yeah,
I know.
and do weird stuff
and weird stuff, and
movies too,
and shake and not and take risks, artistic risks, etc., which is exciting.
So with the Kronos piece, we premiered it at Sundance this year. So
right.
2018.
We can still say that, even though probably when people hear this, it might be in the
next
last year. Yeah, it might be during Sundance even.
We premiered it at Sundance last year, and we've done about 15 shows.
Okay.
And it's funny because a group like Kronos Quartet books things years in advance. So we're now booking shows for 2021 and 2022.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
It's about 1 or 2 shows a month, which is great. It's not like rock and roll touring where you're in a bus going around. You fly off to somewhere, you do a show, you come back. I love doing it. And sometimes people say, you were sort of said this earlier, wouldn't it be easier if you just made a movie and people could watch it on Netflix? Yes, it's true, but actually the going out and presenting a movie and being there is one of my favorite parts of the process.
Right.
So this really accentuates that. You're always there at the screenings. You're always part of it. And I like that, actually.
Right. And this is a live event. This is not just a movie. It's right. It's a component that the screening is, or the projection of the film is part of that, is one component of it, even though it might be the most central one, it sounds like.
Yeah. Also, it pays good.
It does, right?
The film business, the bottom dropped out of the film business.
Yeah.
Unless have a movie that's making millions of dollars, you're not usually making anything. And this performing arts, in the performing arts world, people still get paid. There hasn't been a kind of revolution. Everything has gone digital, and the bottom drops out of the economy of it. So.
Well, now that you bring that up, who is the audience, generally speaking?
We did a big show at the Ace Hotel Theater in L.A. a week ago. And I'd say it's half film people. No, let's say a third film people, a third Kronos fans, and a third performing arts people who would go to see a dance thing or,
Sure.
It was put on by UCLA's performing arts presenter. The people who would do ballet or a talk by, Leonard Nimoy or something like that. So if it were still
I would love to go. Okay. I was going to say that'd be pretty good.
So, it's a mixed audience. It's some film people, but a lot of other people too.
Yeah. But people that are definitely interested in the live experience. Yeah, that makes sense. If Kronos, the real fans wouldn't mind, and probably really love to see something out of the typical context of sitting in a concert hall.
You also learn a lot about Kronos too. They've had a 45-year career, and most people don't know a lot about.
Is it still like original members?
3 of them are.
How many are? It's a quartet.
It's quartet.
So there's 4. I'm pretty fast on my feet. Thanks for highlighting.
It's always one of my favorite questions. How many people are in the Kronos Quartet?
Yeah, at last count 4.
Tends to be 4.
Yeah. Yeah, what do they do if they want to add somebody? They're stuck. And interesting. Are there any more artists that you kind of are excited to explore working with?
Well, I always really wanted to, and I tried hard to do this a couple of years ago. Work with Dan Deacon, who I love. Do you know Dan Deacon?
No,
he's an electronic musician.
Okay.
Who. He is an amazing live performer. He, like most electronic musicians are like behind a laptop, really dull. And he's somebody who can get a crowd, like a huge crowd going, and just is a masterful performer. So I thought he would be great. But does
he have a big following too?
He's got a huge following, and he's super busy and in demand. So.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll see. But you have like at least dates with the Kronos guys.
I also really wanted to... at first, before I decided to do a live documentary turn the... Utopia into a live documentary, I thought I'd get somebody to narrate it. Mm-hmm. And I really was hoping to get Old Dirty Bastard to narrate it. And he died.
Oh, right. The former... the rap star.
Yeah.
Right. He was one of the Wu-Tang Clan. Yeah. Again, and then those guys also do that, right? They collaborate with Jim Jarmusch a long time ago on Ghost Dog, and since then, interesting, right? Where you find the different artists, but
Johnny Greenwood is good, great with movies stuff.
Mm-hmm. Be interesting to get some country group that are willing to do something like that, right? Just for a very different take on it, or approach. True. So with doing those types of things, though, they pay. The other thing that does pay for documentary filmmakers is as you experience with Weather Underground, is the broadcast. It's the best way because, of course, millions of people see your film. Or I guess nowadays, it's not just broadcast; it's also the
Netflix,
Netflix platform. If you can get through that into that small group of filmmakers, that can be very
although I heard
lucrative.
I heard. I mean, I saw a breakdown of somebody getting paid $1 million by Netflix and where it all went, and not that much went into his pocket.
Are you talking about because investors had to be paid
investors
back,
and costs
taxes,
and just stuff like that? I mean, it sounds like a huge windfall, but.
Well, the ideal one is when they just pay for you to make the film, but hopefully it's your film, your idea, and something you wanted to make. It's not their idea.
Yeah.
Well, I assume that doesn't really happen, but that mostly you go to Netflix, you get a meeting, you pitch it, and then they say, okay, we'll actually produce this.
Yeah, sometimes they'll do that for sure.
They did that with I think Heidi and
Rachel's My ideas are always too weird to do stuff like that, though.
Right. And what I'm saying is by pursuing this, but I understand it's an exciting project.
Yeah,
you are making money, so therefore you don't need to do that. But that does Is there a plan to? Do you have? I'm sure you must get inspirations for more conventional documentary projects. I guess it could work for both potentially, right?
Although it's a little weird because I've noticed what works in a live context doesn't translate directly into a regular movie. You can't just take it and move it over, film it, and then there's certain things that work and they wouldn't work otherwise. So I haven't really taken any of my live cinema pieces and made them regular movies, but I am. I just finished this Kronos thing and I'm starting to work on new things, and most of them are traditional documentary ideas. So I want to go back and forth. I'm not wedded to one or the other. I mean, it always, to me, feels like the form of the project, the nature of the project comes out of the subject.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. So it's much more of an organic.
Yeah. And the Kronos piece, one of the reasons I think it turned out so good is I worked with Joe Beanie, who edited Herzog's movies for a million years, and just really good filmmaker, really good editor. Mm-hmm. So we worked together on that and are going to work on some of these new ideas. Yeah.
Where did you meet him?
I met him. I was at an advisor at a Sundance documentary editing lab, and he was too. And he gave a talk about cinema and his ideas of cinema, and I just loved him. He was very radical in his thinking, and that appealed to me. So we became friends, and then at some point I said, hey, you want to work on this weird live thing I'm doing? And I think the idea really appealed to him, because when you're editing a live cinema piece, you're really editing in an extra dimension. Mm-hmm. You're editing what's on the screen, but then you're also editing what's in the room too. Sometimes you want the viewer to be completely engrossed with what's on the screen, but sometimes you want them to be aware of what's happening in the room. So you kind of toggle their attention back and forth.
Meaning like the quartet or the musician
or me.
Or you, because you're narrating?
Yeah, I'm narrating. And with this piece, for example, we take early on, I invoke John Cage, I was going to bring him up, experimental composer, and as a way to get everybody to spend 30 seconds just listening to the room. So the lights go on, silence and people just listen, and you think, oh, well, it's silence. But if you really listen to silence, it's the fan, it's people coughing, it's people shifting in their seats. And it's sort of a funny moment, but I think it's actually a really important moment in getting people to tune their ears up a little and to lean in, because normally with a film, you engage very passively with it. You sit back, especially with sound, because films are mixed so well now and they're so sweetened, and you can just sit there and the movie will wash over you. You don't have to do anything. Mm-hmm. And that's actually very enjoyable to do that. But with this movie, I hope people will actually sit up and listen in an engaged way. And so this little John Cage exercise gets people to engage.
What's more exhilarating than being in a symphony hall or in some sort of theater like that and hearing the musicians warm up?
Yeah.
That incredible sound.
Yeah.
That, is only about 10 seconds long, maybe not even 10 seconds. And you hear it and it's thrilling.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It has nothing to do with the performance per se, but it is in of itself, right?
It's sort of it's very similar in a way to the lights going down in a cinema. It's that
right.
Same
well, it used to what used to feel that way when you would see a movie as a kid, maybe every couple of months, and you'd get that exciting feeling. Now I don't know about you, but I yearn for that, but it doesn't happen too much when the lights go down anymore. But the other thing I was thinking about as you were speaking, not that I wasn't paying attention, of course, was the photographer. There was just a documentary, Winogrand?
Gary Winogrand?
Winogrand, and how he had all the, I don't know if they're called practice toss-off shots at the beginning of the negative, right at the beginning of your role, because you're taking pictures. I don't know if the younger listeners will know what I'm talking about. But when you put a spool of film in your camera back in the day, right, it would take a bunch of moving your shutter forward, taking a picture, moving your shutter, so you were sure you would get to a proper full photo
that wasn't exposed.
That was right. So you were exactly right, because when you're putting the film when you're putting the film into and feeding it in, you're going to lose the very beginning. So he would have all these images, and they were often looking down. Do you know what I'm talking about? So, because he would be pointing the camera down at his feet, and there would be like shadows, and sometimes his daughter would be sitting on his shoulders because he became a dad late in life, and he would take his daughter on these walks, and he would take pictures, and it became this whole. I think it actually became a show. Those images.
Wow.
But he had, of course, thousands of undeveloped film rolls, and that's what he's known for. Like, one of the things was that he just was so prolific and made so, and that he had, countless rolls of film that were never developed in his lifetime. So anyway, but I remember this being interesting when it brought on. I talked to the filmmaker who made that. Sasha, that's right. Fryer Waters, right? Waters Fryer.
That movie is on my list to watch.
Yeah,
I have a long list that gets longer all the time. But
if it plays in a movie theater for some weird reason, I don't see why. I don't see how it could. Right again, but it's just
it's one of the Academy. I get all these DVDs,
your screeners.
So
yeah, sure. They still send them out like that?
It's funny because I can't play DVDs. I have no way to play DVDs.
Oh, you don't?
No. I don't have a DVD player, and my computer doesn't have a...
Well, they have these really inexpensive external DVD. I have one, and I just pulled it out of the drawer because I wanted to actually put a CD in and like download it to my computer. I realized, how do I do this? I give my kid my old MacBook. I could borrow that and then put it on the US. It's like you download it onto the computer or another computer. Put in a USB,
there you
go. Disk, whatever memory stick, and then copy it onto that, and then take that out and put copy. It's ludicrous.
I know. I could have just bought it on iTunes or probably on YouTube. Actually,
well, I do that. I do that because I love listening to music too, and I was at a party. You know Larry Fessenden?
Yeah,
you do.
I know who he is. Okay. I don't know him.
He's a producer. He does a lot of genre. But he has this annual party, and I was just there because it was like a holiday party, and in walks one of my favorite musicians, like that I'm sure I know I was the only one who knew who he was because he's not known. That. He's also a really great painter, and he was signed for a minute years ago, like 20 years ago, on Peter Gabriel's Real World label. For what reason, I'm not sure, because he's, I guess everywhere else in the world, he's a world art music artist. He's anyway, but he's so prolific, and he's so great a musician. And I've seen him play a bunch of times, and he does a lot of City Winery and other, small venues, and he tours, I guess, some degree. I don't know. Anyway, so I got to talk to him and just say, and I have one of your harmonicas, because he dropped it on the floor during a show once. I was standing up front, and I said, I'm going to keep it as a joke, and you said, yeah, it's yours. So I was like, I have it. But he agreed he wants to do a podcast, and he was excited to meet and to do the podcast. Yeah. So I'm going over to his place in the East Village on Thursday.
Oh, cool.
And
who is it? What's his name?
Joseph Arthur. And know. He's terrific, just terrific.
Huh.
Yeah, so I dug out, because I used to work in the music industry, so I had tubs of CDs that are sitting in a closet, and I was digging out my copies of his CDs because I wanted to bring them over. Anyway, but he would be a great collaborator too. Huh. He's also collaborates with a lot of different musicians, and likes to, I think, take risks and do things that are, out of the ordinary, I'm just explaining it pretty poorly, but I'm saying he's just might be an interesting collaborator. Joseph Arthur. Yeah, he's been around a long time. I think he's one of those guys that a lot of musicians know. I think, and because of his collaborations and because he's just been such a road warrior or whatever. Anyway, that's kind of exciting for what I do, that I can do that, or those experiences happen, and I learned so much during the course of these conversations myself. So it's very gratifying, So that's next. So I guess, do you find yourself? It seems like you're somewhat plugged into things. I remember a couple of years back you were hosting the
Cinema
Eye honors.
Yeah,
which they usually have their party right up the block here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Don't they? Right at the Polish dance.
Yeah, right down there.
Whatever it is, that building, that strange building.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I lived in San Francisco for 20 years.
Oh.
And I moved here 8 years ago to New York.
Oh, I see.
And I love New York. I'm in some ways a newcomer still. With the newcomers, I'll come over and say hi to you on the Upper West Side. Just like, I remember doing that with Jack Lechner.
Jack Lechner. How did you first meet him?
I met him in San Francisco a million years ago.
Oh, okay. Was he living there at the time?
No, he was there for a film financing conference called IFCON.
Okay.
It was probably
Terrific name.
1998 or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I liked him a lot, and we kept in touch. So I remember when I moved here, I was like, "Hey, Jack, want to have lunch?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm on the Upper West Side. Come over." And I was living in, I don't know, like Windsor Terrace or something. I was like, sure, no problem. So I still have that, and I like, one of the great things about New York is there's so many people doing great stuff here.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and he produced Errol Morris's the one on.
Give me a clue.
No, I will. Well, he was the Secretary of the Defense. Yeah, McNamara.
Fog of War.
Fog of War.
That's the
it's
movie
gonna be one of those days
that beat me at the Academy Awards.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I actually was happy because Errol Morris deserved to win an Oscar. He's made so many great films, and I felt like
that was one he should have won it for. It's so rare.
Yeah, I felt that it would have been impertinent for me to win. So
sure,
I was happy.
How many every year that you just see tons of impertinence at the Oscars because you see all these iconic filmmakers or actors, and they're sitting there in the audience.
Yeah.
Some 85-year-old guy who's made, for 60 years been making, incredible works. And then some new kid
for sure,
gets the Oscar, and it's like, all right.
I'm making this long-term movie called The Oldest Person in the World. And what I'm doing, the Guinness record for the oldest person in the world changes very often.
It must, yeah, of course.
It's an old person, and they die, and another person, usually they're about 115. And so I've been working on this movie for a couple of years where I film each person who has that record. And I'm going to keep doing it for years and years. I'm actually going to do it for the rest of my life. But
you're buried the lead.
What's that?
This is a great...
So I will win an Academy Award for that in 20 years.
I think you will. I think
and then it'll be deserved. It won't be impertinent.
Well, okay. The only problem is you can't bring your subjects.
That's true. That's definitely true.
But that's a project along as ambitious as, I'm thinking about, the 7-Up film.
Yeah.
It's a similar kind of expansive, very...
Or even Boyhood was
Boyhood,
great
of course.
in that way.
Sure, it was. But this is interesting. So how many subjects have you been
I've
following?
filmed 5.
That's incredible. 5 already?
Yeah.
And you must have to travel the world, right?
Yeah, I just got back. I was in Japan about 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Filmed the current oldest person, who's a woman who lives in Japan.
How does that, now I'm really intrigued, how do you...
Find the people?
Yeah, how do you hook up? Well, I guess the Guinness Book people must
Well,
help.
there's, this being, 2019.
You can email them.
There's a list on Wikipedia of the 50 oldest people in the world, and it's updated daily. So it's easy to tell who they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to get in touch with them because
right.
usually they don't have email.
Well, that's the part I figured it would be.
Well, their families, often they have a family who you can access, or with the Japanese woman, she was in a nursing home, and the nursing home...
has a phone number.
Yeah, I mean, I hired a Japanese person to help me, and they set it up.
Okay. I guess there's probably like 2 days of a private detective at worst case scenario. I mean,
yeah,
where you could, or a private investigator, right?
Occasionally, sometimes the family will not want to participate.
How did you do? And you just have to like...
There was one person who I didn't get.
Okay.
But she was very short-lived, and Guinness actually never recognized her. There's a whole complicated thing with being able to prove it and having the paperwork to prove it.
And if they don't provide that, then...
Yeah, or if they don't provide enough of it...
I see.
You're not the oldest person in the world.
Right. So you started this one?
I started in 2015.
Was that... just recently. So was the first subject local?
Yeah. I started it... I made a movie about the Guinness Book of Records. And it was...
I know.
It was a live cinema piece.
Yeah.
And I... as I performed it over a couple of years, I had to constantly change the oldest person in the world. And I became curious. I sort of started to think about that record and how weirdly fascinated we are with it.
Absolutely.
There's something of like the fear of death in there, a kind of fascination.
Yeah, of
but
course.
anyway...
It's like that gives us the most hope of that. Like 115, that means I'm still middle-aged.
Yeah, but also, there's that. But also like, oh my God, I could live to be that old. In a way, it's not, it's not a positive thing.
Well, it depends.
But anyway, so I started to think about it. I thought, God, I should make a documentary about this. And then the oldest person in the world lived in Brooklyn, New York, on the L, like several stops down the L. So I thought,
right nearby,
I have to start.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with her.
Mm-hmm. And she was 116. 116 years old?
She was only one of 2 people left who were born in the 1800s.
Oh my God. How many?
Well, there were 2. She died.
In the United States or?
In the world.
In the world, they were born
in the
19th century?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so then the next oldest person was a woman who lived in Italy, and she was the last person. I filmed her, and now there's nobody left.
Oh, that was born before 1900.
Right.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting how it's this constant... They're the oldest person, so they're the furthest back lived experience we have. And when they go, that's it. So now the...
Living testaments.
Oldest person, the current woman, was born in 1903.
So that's before World War I.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Right? And...
Yeah. Way back.
Right, yeah.
Way back then.
Yeah. It's amazing to talk. And you can have conversations.
Yeah,
so they don't all have to be long. They're just, even if you get one day with them, right?
Yeah.
It's can do what you're trying to do in a way, right? Which is...
It's just a little portrait.
But it makes sense. I mean, we are definitely a lot of people... Well, certainly Jewish people are worried, are a little bit, obsessed with the mortality issue. I mean, I know I wouldn't discount, or I definitely am. I definitely think of that. I'm thinking about the 116-year-old, and I literally would be still middle-aged. I mean, I guess I'm considered middle-aged in the generic term.
Yeah,
but
you're a teenager.
To be literally,
you're a teenager.
Yeah, my God, it's amazing. So she have the Brooklyn one? Did she have like great grandchildren or something? Or?
Yeah, she had a huge. Well, she never had kids, which was interesting.
Oh my god!
But several of them have not had kids.
Oh,
but she had
explains
I know
longevity.
But she had a very extended, loving family, and in a way that makes sense. I asked her 82-year-old niece, how did she live so long? And she said she didn't have the two things that kill you: a husband and kids. And
was she kidding?
She was kidding, but there's also something serious about that. I mean, I have
Yeah.
a child now, and I see how you worry about a kid. And that worry ages you. But
right.
if you have a family that loves you, but you don't have to worry in that way, it's probably pretty good for your health.
Yeah. Well, that's a great project. We'll have to come back together.
In 20 years.
In 20 years.
Yeah.
When I'll be maybe past middle age. Or maybe I'll just have to come back when I'm a subject in your documentary.
Hey, the thing is with this record, no man allowed. It's never a man.
It's never a man.
Never a man.
It's remarkable. So the oldest person in the world is always
a woman.
As far back as we can.
No, there was a man. Every once in a while it's a man. Like maybe 5 years ago there was a man, but it's just a blip. It's sort of like the opposite of the marathon where men have these great times and all the women are like, a little bit slower. And this is the opposite. It's like the women kick ass and the oldest man's like 2010 or something like that.
Meaning that...
is 110.
110.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Okay. But that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And it is double my age, so I'm fine with
only halfway there.
I'm not greedy. I'll take 110. I don't have to be 116. I'll complain when I'm 110 and I'm dying that I didn't make it to 100.
Man.
I could be the
oldest man doing a podcast.
I may be already there. Well, keep me on your mailing list. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I appreciate your putting up, because normally I'm working at the disadvantage that I haven't been to one of the shows.
Yeah.
But I'll rectify that the next time we have a New York show.
Yeah, April.
In April. Perfect.
Yeah, April 25th.
Okay. Which is going to be with the... is it going to be at the Kronos Quartet
at
again?
Town Hall.
Okay. I love that place.
Yeah, I love that place too.
I've seen a lot of shows at
that's a storied
beautiful
venue.
Yeah. I took my kid to his first live music there, I think.
What did you see?
It was this band, like a very family-friendly pop, folky pop band called the Weepies.
Uh-huh. Huh.
They write these. It's a husband and wife,
and
they're really super talented, actually. Huh. And the songs are they're adult, they're about love and about quirky people and, typical stuff that people things that people go through. It's not intended for children, but it works.
Works for kids.
For kids, because they're not they're not trying to be like rock and roll or it's just this, and the songs are very catchy, and well written and very well crafted.
There's a great Pennebaker documentary, Town Bloody Hall.
Oh yeah,
that takes place in Town Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really happy to be doing a show there, kind of just because of that.
Oh yeah, right. Oh, that's the one with
Norman Mailer.
And where he's challenging all these feminists.
Yeah,
on the stage.
Attacked by feminists.
Yeah, who gets thrown to the floor? Forget
somebody.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's like making out on the floor. Just the whole thing. It turns into just like a spectacle.
Right. I remember that. It was it's all archived.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, thank you. This has been terrific.
Thank you.
I hope we achieved.
I
think it was. Yeah, this is kind of achieved for my purposes anyway. So we'll get this up, and then of course as April comes up, and okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Or whenever.
Yeah.
I'm not that precious about it.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
My pleasure.